You're listening to The World at 8 with Lynn Mozart. The World at 8, the number one in nationalist news.
Highlights of the news today, Wednesday the 14th of November. Labour councillor made to apologise over insult. Is there a solution for evil Qatada and his money pit of greed? Strikes on the way due to austerity. Turnip heads annoy the hell out of Swedes. The Palestinians to exhume ex-president's body. China in talks over Central Committee. Newborn baby killed in Afghanistan. Thought for the day, we've all gone bloody mad. And finally, a diamond geezer. UK news. A senior Labour Basildon councillor, Phil Rackley, is being investigated over comments used on the social networking site Facebook to insult Tory Mayor Mo Larkin, councillor for Pitsea South East. Although these comments have been withdrawn, it is alleged that one of Rackley's jibes was about the picture Ms Larkin put on Facebook, which he described as lamb dressed as mutton, but Larkin claimed he meant mutton dressed as lamb. One World at 8 reporter commented, "Typical Labour, can't even string a sentence together and get it right. 4 words are just too much, aren't they? Just stick to the one word you shout at us nationalists and you won't get it the wrong way round, Phil." He was made to write an apology to Larkin, and the grovelling letter by Rackley can be read online. The Mayor's complaint has been referred to monitoring officer Chris White for a full investigation. If Mr Rackley is found guilty, he could be suspended and barred from council meetings. There could be a solution to the presence of that evil Jabba the Hutt Qatada and his everlasting stay in the country that feeds him and yet which he hates. In a letter to the Telegraph, a reader has stated, "The Lockerbie bomber was tried by Scottish judges in a neutral country with the agreement of the Libyans. Why can't a similar arrangement be reached with Jordan regarding the trial of Abu Qatada, the extremist cleric? Then evidence can be monitored to ensure nothing obtained under torture is presented, and if found guilty, the defendant can be sent back to Jordan." It appears that unless Jordanian law is amended or our deportation laws amended, which could take years, an immediate solution similar to the one above should be considered. During these days of impending financial crises and European troubles, this Muslim bastard and his rotten extended family have been costing the British public many thousands of pounds for the last decade. In fact, a staggering £1 million has already been sacrificed on the altar of this man. The outlook for the future of this parasite also looks rosy, as the security services and police 24-hour surveillance will cost the British taxpayer more than £5 million a year. However, David Anderson QC, the independent reviewer of terrorism legislation, indicated that it could take years before Qatada can be removed from Britain. Jordan's acting information minister, Naif El-Fayez, said the Jordanian government shared Britain's disappointment at the ruling. A World at 8 writer comments, "The Islamic view of bringing a nation to its knees financially is alive and working very well through this pig. He has made Britain a laughingstock with its inability to simply ignore the EU and human rights and bundle him and his family on a plane and fly them to Jordan. A deed done which could not be undone." Euro news. Due to the European Union austerity fiasco, countries tied up in the mess are already undergoing huge strikes. Spain, Greece, France, Portugal, Italy, Great Britain and other smaller EU countries from the east are already preparing massive demonstrations and strikes in their countries. These actions have already caused problems for holidaymakers and their families going to Spain, with airline and holiday companies asking customers to telephone them first before setting off due to the rescheduling. Spain saw a huge demonstration march last night over its austerity programme, which has seen a rise in its unemployment to a staggering 25%. The Portuguese capital Lisbon has been brought to a standstill while schools and offices have been closed. The main cause of these riots are because many countries have been forced to impose spending cuts and tax hikes to get bailout payments from the International Monetary Fund. Polls show that support for the anti-Islam Swedish Democrats is soaring thanks to out-of-control Muslim immigration. Over 50,000 Muslim asylum seekers are expected to come to Sweden next year, according to the latest prognosis from the Swedish Migration Board, Migrationsverket, pushing the country's capacity well past its limits. So it's no surprise that yet another poll has found the anti-immigration Swedish Democrats the country's third largest political party. This is a very strange situation, said Migration Minister Tobias Billström to the TT news agency. Since September this year, 1,250 asylum seekers have arrived in Sweden each week, far more than the Migration Board's capacity of between 500 and 700. Ban Islam in Sweden and deport those who persist in believing in the religion, said Per Norling, group leader of the Sweden Democrats SD in Bollnäs. Sweden Democrats single out Islam as the religion that conflicts most with the Swedish culture, for the first time now writing the party in opposition to its policy programme. Party leader Jimmy Åkesson reiterated the aim to seriously challenge the Social Democrats and moderates in the government. The SD is becoming increasingly popular for its anti-Muslim, anti-immigrant campaigns. Immediately after their electoral win in 2010, the SD started working on imposing a moratorium on building new mosques in the Scandinavian country. The party, whose manifesto describes Muslims as seriously jeopardising the Swedish nation, has also sought a ban on face veil and halting immigration from predominantly Muslim countries. It opposes a panel recommendation that all major religions should be given equal time in lesson plans, saying Christianity should maintain a special status. Muslims make up some 200,000 of the country's 9.5 million population, according to semi-official estimates. But leaders of the Muslim minority put the number at 400,000. There is a feeling of frustration in Sweden, that there is something happening in Sweden that we have to deal with, but mainstream parties are not looking at it, said Daniel Poole, editor of Expo magazine, an anti-racist publication that investigates far-right politics. A World Date reporter stated, and they will not address it in the future unless forced to do so, which is the trouble with most European and Western governments. World news. The Palestinian government has decided to exhume the body of its late president, Yasser Arafat. Claims which have been reported in a televised news report around 16 weeks ago on state television state that the late president may have died due to foul play. The tomb of Yasser Arafat has been sectioned off from the public and investigators are now at the scene removing his body, and experts will be performing another post-mortem to ascertain whether these rumours are true. More than 2,000 communist officials in China have been locked in talks to announce its new leadership. They have had several days to make their decisions on who will be top brass in their central committee. The announcement will be made tomorrow from Beijing. A newborn baby was killed by a roadside bomb in the Khost province of Afghanistan. The child's mother and members of the family were killed as well. In southern Helmand province, a roadside bomb killed 3 and wounded 2 members of one family on their way to a wedding. Civilians are bearing the brunt of the war now in that country, and the total is around 3,000 last year. One must bear in mind this war is in its 11th year. This invasion was started by the Russians in 1979 and there has been no peace since. It must also be remembered that it is their own people laying these awful bombs along the sides of rough tracks which are used more by civilians than our or the US armed forces. If we were not there, which we should not be, there would still be killing and maiming, because that is what Islam does to a country, even its own, in the name of that not so peaceful religion. The West should not totally shoulder the blame. The northwest of India has always been a bad region and an unsettled one, and tribalism and sectarianism in all its awful forms will always exist there. Thought for the day. Are we all bloody mad? I'm having a Victor Meldrew day today. I simply do not believe it. Some stupid old liberal, pro-Islamic judge has allowed that bastard Qatada to stay in this country. I am seething. I've smoke coming out of my ears and elsewhere. What is the judiciary system coming to? They fine an old lady for sending out leaflets in rather dubious taste but with a sincere message, £5,000, brought down from the original 20,000 demanded by Sherry's law firm Matrix, or as I call them, in extremis, and yet allow a known terrorist and hater of all things British and Christian to stay on in our country. Now the upshot of all this is that you, the taxpayer, will have to pay out for 24-hour surveillance, tagging, interpreters to deal with his effing wives and brats, lawyers who are probably on legal aid courtesy of you and me, and God knows what else, for perpetuity. That is until he is martyred, which would be cheaper for all concerned, or is thrown out back to Jordan where they can deal with him. And frankly, I do not care if they tortured the bugger to death, it's okay with me. Still, we will have to deport his family as well, because they're costing the taxpayers thousands of pounds a year, and his progeny are not yet old enough to make use of the free further education they no doubt will demand if allowed to stay. Besides, it is inhumane to separate families, isn't it? There, I feel much better now, rather like Henry II in France when he spoke about Thomas Becket. What sluggards, what cowards have I brought in my court who care nothing for their allegiance to their lord? Who will rid me of this meddlesome priest? Only in this case the priest is a Muslim cleric and poor old Henry is poor old England. Now if there had been a Christian priest in Jordan who preached real hatred under the guise of religion, what steps do you think the Jordanians would take? Either he or Famil would have been put to the sword or deported without trial back here. That is how Islam treats what they regard as traitors within their own countries. Qatada needs to be left to his own to deal with, as he is so fond of Islam and it is such a peaceful religion, if only from a distance of the UK with benefits to Jordan. I am with the Jordanians here, wall and gun. Even odder is the city banker divorcing her husband because of a book. If my better half advanced on me with ropes and winch and hawser, he'd get holy hell and a bunch of fives to boot. If he doesn't want to play her games, it is probably because he's playing someone else's games, or he just doesn't fancy her anymore. Grow up, woman. Divorce is a long and lonely road at your age. Don't go there. Also bear in mind, from one who knows, a man's reaction to a successful married woman is very different to that of a slightly over-the-hill retired divorcee. There are just too many of you around and males prefer much younger meat, and who can blame them? I would need a winch and hawser just to get off the bed after being tied up. Equally stupid and angry making is the doll that little girls can breastfeed. Oh, really disgusting. Not breastfeeding, but the thought of little girls actually wanting to do it. When I was little I just wanted to read books and play in the garden. My dolls were sadly neglected. The breast milk baby is a Spanish idea from Berjuan Toys. Well, it would be, wouldn't it? I wonder if they do a bull running board game or a bullfighting array of swords for little boys. This doll is aimed at children of 2 years and upwards. The child wears a bib with nipples and the doll makes sucking sounds, and I'm just about to be very sick. Now don't get me wrong, the sight of a new mother breastfeeding is a wonderful but private sight. The idea of flipping out a tit in a shopping mall does not appeal to me, and the sight of little girls, no more than babies themselves, carrying around a slurping, suckling doll is really repulsive on so many levels. Apparently our NHS is firmly behind promoting breastfeeding. Well, they've changed their tune from 40 years ago when it was frowned upon. You simply did not feed your children, you gave them bottles. The NHS claim that they spend £40 million a year treating illnesses in women and babies that would be prevented by mother's milk. I still think if you can do it, do it. If not, do not worry, they grow up regardless. Back to breast milk baby. I think it should be forbidden to import such an example of early sexualisation into the UK, but unfortunately it is available from the web for £30. We already have single mothers of very young years, sexual predilections rampaging through kindergarten, and we do not need any more tripe for our little girls. Can you imagine the effect on the local paedophile of a little girl ostensibly breastfeeding a doll? It doesn't bear thinking about. To make me even more steaming, we in Britain are facing 20 more compensation cases which will be brought against us by terror suspects who state they have been falsely imprisoned, mistreated, with complicity in rendition. Apparently the government has already signed cheques worth £20 million to 16 people in similar cases. Now what is this government thinking about? These people have all been linked with terrorism or else they would not have been arrested. What is the point of arresting and questioning people if concerns arise relating to national or public security if the authorities do not have a free hand? Our own people are arrested quite regularly as many white suspects of crime, and yet we have no recourse to massive compensation as these peoples apparently do. Civil liberties groups should go to Saudi or another Muslim country and see where civil liberties gets you. If these suspected terrorists are not happy with this country, in the words of our chairman, I will say, this is Britain, love it or leave it. It must be well known to the powers that be that our country is just a meal ticket to many, and they know that they can use all these second-rate liberty groups to get a lot of unearned money whilst pleading their case. Again, they will get short shrift in their own countries, and I say they should be deported immediately without a penny. How long can this country and our people pay out for these parasites? How long can the government ignore that our people are going short? How long will it be to pay off the ever-increasing national debt, to which the payment of £20 million would have been very nice, thank you? If some Muslim feels aggrieved, let him and his family leave. It is that simple. Hell, we'd even help them pack and leave their houses for our own people, still on waiting lists or just forgotten, or rather in most cases whole streets of cities would become free again. One last thought. I received an email from the Centre of European Studies, which is based in an EU office. It was inviting me to a conference for the EU-MENA cooperation held in the Yehudi menu in space, Brussels. I will just read the following paragraph. The Arab Spring has led to major changes in the Middle East and North Africa, MENA, over the past 2 years, which have provided a rare opportunity for Europe and MENA countries to begin a fresh era of cooperation based on dialogue and mutual respect. This means in English that the EU is even more riddled by Islam than we think. It means that all the troubles in the Middle East are being formed and aided by certain Europeans, not necessarily a Zionist conspiracy, but a conspiracy nonetheless. The EU minions think that they are organising the Muslims, but in fact the Muslims are organising them. Needless to say, I will not be going, but I would like to be a fly on the wall at that convention of hypocrites. And finally, a real diamond geezer called Oliver the cat. Oliver, 5, is in the doghouse after wolfing down his owner's prized diamond necklace, which he had to have surgically removed. Owners Francine Lace and Steve Digby thought the necklace had been lost, but then after searching for it, finally turned to Oliver. He was taken to an RSPCA hospital where an X-ray revealed the necklace in Ollie's tummy in all its glory. This presenter says that it's far more romantic than one of my cats. Poor little Pongo Vampira swallowed 6 foam earplugs and had to have an emergency operation to save his life. But Ollie clearly knows his gems, and diamonds are forever. Couldn't resist it. You have been listening to The World at 8. I'm Lynn Mozart and I wish you all a very good night.